All right, so this is a suggestion via Discord. The name of the video is why people are leaving blue states and why Dems should worry. All right, this is coming from the channel The Recount. Let's jump into it.
There's a year that should absolutely terrify Democrats. It's not 2024 or 2026 or even 2028. It's 2032.
Okay.
For decades now, the Census Bureau has been calculating the US's demographic tipping point. This is a measure of population distribution that imagines the place in the US where the population is evenly balanced in every direction. In 1800, the year of the first census, when the country was essentially just on the East Coast, the tipping point was in Maryland, near Baltimore. As the country expanded, it began to move west. And in recent decades, it zoomed both west and south, landing at its current spot here in Missouri. And that gives you a sense of how the population is moving in the US right now. Generally, northern and eastern states are shrinking relative to the overall population, while southern and western states are growing. There are a lot of reasons for this trend that we'll get into. But one thing that's not up for debate is that the population movement right now is a flashing red warning sign for Democrats. The
It should be,
is
but they generally are not going to pick up on the small details. They just think anyone who doesn't have the same ideology as them is evil.
2030 reapportionment. Every 10 years, the US conducts a census. One big thing done with that data is the recalculation of how many seats each state gets in the House of Representatives.
Right. California is losing them.
And how many votes it gets in the Electoral College. And those numbers move in tandem. If you gain 2 House seats, you gain 2 electoral votes. If you lose a House seat, you lose an electoral vote. So population growth, population shifts, where people are choosing to move to and settle down, that all matters a ton to the political landscape. And right now, it's not really a question of who's winning. Democratic states are losing population and Republican states are gaining. Here's one way to think about it. In 2020, Joe Biden won a 306 to 232 victory in the Electoral College. Then, after 2020, the census was finished and representation was reallocated for the 2022 midterms and 2024 presidential election. Under the new map, winning those same states would have shrunk Biden's victory margin by 6 electoral votes. To 303 to 235.
Hold on. Guys, what do you think would happen? Like, not what do you think would happen, but what do you think happens when you go too far over to one side? You start ostracizing the people who don't immediately, inherently believe or agree with any of the things that you're basically promoting because you're targeting a very niche subgroup of individuals, right? I can imagine how that could be a literal thing, right? So if you go too far in one direction, you're now telling everyone else, bro, we don't like you. You guys are evil. You're all types of ists and things like that. So what do these people then do? Leave. They don't want nothing to do with your state anymore, bro. They're going to go to places where they feel as if freedom is, in their version of freedom, at least, is more attainable to them and their family, guys.
The beginning. The next census will happen in 2030, and the map will again change for the 2032 presidential election. And right now, the outlook for that map is a disaster for Democrats. 2 different groups with opposite political leanings have estimations for what it will look like, and they're almost exactly the same. Ironically, the liberal group's map is slightly worse for Democrats. So, in the interest of argument, let's go with that one. This is what reapportionment is on track to look like in 2030. Blue states like California and New York shedding House seats and electoral votes. And red states like Texas and Florida gaining 4 new electoral votes and House seats each. For an example of how much that could shift the map, in 2024, Donald Trump won a 312 to 226 victory in the Electoral College. Under this projection, the exact same state and vote breakdown would swell that margin by 20 electoral votes to 322 to 216. Now, these projections this far out usually don't turn out to be completely accurate.
They're not going to be.
Usually not quite as dramatic as they appear, but they are almost always directionally correct. They're right about the way the wind is blowing. And right now, the wind is absolutely blowing away from Democratic-controlled states and towards Republican-controlled ones. And it's worth asking why. To start, it's worth clarifying that states very rarely actually lose raw numbers of people. In the 2000 census, not a single state had fewer people living in it than in 1990. In 2010, only Michigan had seen its population drop, and it had just seen its economy decimated by the near death of the auto industry. And in 2020, the only states that actually saw a real population decline from 2010 were West Virginia, Mississippi, and Illinois. So overwhelmingly, when we talk about states shrinking or losing population, we almost always actually mean growing, but slower than the rest of the country. It's also worth remembering that these kinds of population shifts rarely happen in one 10-year stretch, or because of one governor or bad decision. They're almost always long-term, decades-long trends. For example, there are only 5 states that have lost electoral votes and House seats in every census since 2000: Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. Over the past 30 years, every one of them has had Republican and Democratic governors and Republican and Democratic legislatures. 2 are now deep blue, 1 is deep red, and 2 are purple. So,
Guys, notice the place.
what do they have in common?
The opioid crisis. That's what most of these places have in common, guys. I mean, look at upstate New York, bro. Okay, look at a good bit of Pennsylvania in certain places. Yeah, Ohio. Yeah, people are running from these things. This is my overall speculation, but I'm sure he's going to have a different answer here.
Well, they're the exact states that make up the Rust Belt. The states where steel production and industrial manufacturing were huge industries across the 20th century, before heavily declining in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. That goes a long way towards explaining why they're consistently ones that don't grow as fast as the rest of the country. That doesn't mean those states made perfect decisions, but it does mean that before jumping to big conclusions about anyone in office now, it's important to remember that big, national, years old, sometimes decades old forces can shape these dynamics.
That's valid.
With all that being said, the overall trend here is hard to ignore. The red areas of the country are becoming a bigger and bigger share of the pie. And it gets to a flashing red problem for Democrats, both for their political survival and brand identity. For the most part, it is expensive as hell to live in a blue area governed by Democrats. The data is
and dangerous. Isn't that odd, guys? Isn't it odd?
8 of the 10 states with the highest rent prices are solid blue states. And 8 of the 10 states with the highest cost of living index are also solid blue states. Now, there is some important nuance here. One thing to note is that a higher cost of living can actually correlate to economic well-being and prosperity. The states with the lowest overall cost of living also have some of the highest poverty rates.
God,
Part
what
of
is
why
that?
you get away with charging people a lot for a beer in Massachusetts or an apartment in New York is that people have money and want to spend it there. Theoretically, that's good. That's what you want in an economy. But it's also true that most people are not rich. Most people aren't white-collar professionals.
Exactly.
Most people aren't even college graduates. And having a
Yeah, but the Democrat Party basically doesn't care about those people, guys.
high GDP or on-paper prosperity doesn't
They say
mean
they
much
do.
when most people can't afford their lives. So why are blue cities and states in such an affordability crisis right now?
Go ahead,
Well,
explain
to
it.
start, obviously, we're all thinking it. 1, 2, 3, taxes. It's just a fact that Democratic-controlled states tend to impose higher tax rates. Sometimes that means taxes that some GOP states don't even have, like the income tax. Sometimes that just means higher taxes on gas or plastic bags or cigarettes. Culture is another part. By now, it's clear that COVID and 2020 presented a particular challenge for blue states and cities, many of which took a much softer approach to urban disorder and unrest and are still trying to reverse the damage. On a lot of stuff, Democrats also just tend to be more lax or more compassionate, depending on your point of view. The upside might be that a homeless person is treated with more dignity, or you won't get thrown in jail just for having a bag of marijuana. But the downside might be that now a public park is
now everyone is coming to your area to utilize, the ability, let's say, to take over a public park, bro. I mean, that's not the best thing in the world. I mean, I understand the concept of being compassionate, but there still needs to be like some rules kind of around it, bro. Like I hear what this guy's trying to say, but this should not be something that's in existence here. Not like this. Not specifically a public park. There could be some type of like public area or some type of public fund that can fund an area where if you wanted to pitch a tent, you can go pitch a tent, right? Make sure there's still like police there and security there because I'm not specifically against the concept of it, but I just think that it needs to have a little bit more structure. Because when I see this, it tells me I need to leave this area and never look back.
Inaccessible to families wanting to use it, or people are
This
doing
does not
hard
bring
drugs on the
tax dollars
street
up,
without the law
guys.
intervening, which isn't actually compassionate to anyone. So
No,
it's complex.
not at all.
But more than taxes or culture or anything else, the overwhelming majority of this issue stems from one big fact.
Okay.
Housing. It has just become really expensive for people to buy or rent a place to live in many blue states. By any conceivable metric, the US overall is in an affordable housing crisis right now. The average renting American now spends over 30% of their income on rent. The ratio of income to housing prices is at a record high right now, and at its highest in blue states. Housing costs made up over a third of the inflation rate last year. Take housing out of it, and the inflation rate would already be back to pre-COVID levels. And that is way more in cities, including some cities in red states. But it is noticeably, disproportionately, undeniably worse in cities and suburbs in blue states. And we have clear data showing us that this has now become a direct drag on Democrats. An NBC analysis of the 2024 presidential race found that Trump made his biggest gains in the counties that have the worst housing markets. Remember those top 10 most expensive states and how 8 of them were blue states? 5 of those 8 were also in the 10 states that swung the most towards Trump in 2024. And even when people don't move out of a blue city or state, the people that stay are increasingly reacting to the high cost of living by losing faith in the Democratic Party. Again, especially middle and working class people. It's not a coincidence that Trump's biggest gains in 2024 were in diverse working class congressional districts in California and the New York City area, places where the Democratic Party has full control and has failed to address the cost of living. And yes, there are all sorts of challenges to building in cities. For one, you can't just chop down some trees to make space. People are also way closer to each other, so the zoning and environmental impact issues can be bigger. But we also know that there is a way to address this in cities, mainly because many blue cities in red states have done it. Take Austin, which is the seat of a county that voted for Kamala Harris by almost 40 points. It's seen explosive growth over the past 15 years, partly because the city and state have been very successful at making housing more affordable. That's not because every landlord there suddenly became a socialist or because they banned BlackRock, but because they fundamentally just built more housing, making more space and lowering the prices. That's the kind of thing that makes families move there, companies open there, students stay there. And remember, each one of those people is a tiny little piece of building another electoral vote every 10 years.
Guys, this is super valid. Like, this is probably one of the more informative videos that we've encountered in a while. All right. I'm not really sensing much of a bias here. He's actually just speaking the facts here. And I love the fact that he's doing that without any inherent, deeply baked in bias here. I didn't know what I was going to be expecting when I read the title here, but I'm definitely glad that he's kind of breaking it down. It could legitimately be housing. It needs to be things like the reasons why people are actually leaving is not because of X, let's say, right? It's because of things that are absolutely, in fact, tangible to their own specific life, and housing, in fact, makes sense here, guys. It's all about supply and demand in areas, right? So if there are not enough houses, guess what's going to keep remaining high? Rent, guys.
Contrast, cities like New York and LA and San Francisco and Boston are in an absolutely different spot. It is simply incredibly expensive to live there. And at a certain point, a lot of people, especially people who don't get to work fancy white-collar college degree jobs, just give up. Take California. Polls have repeatedly found that the overwhelming reason people cite for leaving or wanting to leave California isn't wokeness or not enough gun freedom or whatever. It's cost.
It's what they feel.
And the irony of all of this, of course, is that the Democratic Party sees its political power decrease when fewer people live in the states that it controls. But it is the policies of its own politicians which are preventing more people from living in them. Now, there are a lot of complex reasons for why that is that people smarter than me have reported and written about a lot. From zoning rules that are really hard to change, to decades-old laws or constitutional amendments that create big barriers, to the real estate lobby wanting to keep prices high. And there are people in both parties that do want to do something about this. Not every politician is the same. Some Democrats, like Colorado Governor Jared Polis, have made this their centerpiece issue. And not every Republican area is somehow perfect. Miami, a red dot in a red state,
yeah, that's filth, bro. Don't even go down there, bro. But a lot of that comes from it's a tourist destination, and a lot of people from big cities. Guess where they like going? Guess where they like going? to Miami. It's also full of crime. It's just it's a troubling area here, guys, right?
Super expensive. And many GOP-controlled states still have a housing crisis. It's just at DEFCON 3 instead of DEFCON 1. But at the end of the day, before
well played. Well
they
played.
vote with their feet. And it's undeniable that right now, they are voting against Democratic-controlled states. And if Democrats want to point to red states with abortion bans or low teacher pay and tell voters this is who Republicans are, Republicans have every right to point to homeless encampments and the unaffordable way of life in blue states and say, this is who Democrats are. And that's the big issue for Democrats. This issue gets to the heart of their problems right now.
Nice.
They're losing votes, they're losing electoral power, and they're losing their credibility. Doing pro-growth policy.
Oh, good bro, he has
votes,
none.
They're losing electoral power, and they're
The mayor of Chicago, he has no credibility, bro. He lost all credibility with the people that actually voted him into power, bro. They don't even like him anymore. He started out being one person, and then when the migrant crisis basically started in Illinois, he just basically walked. Listen, he just followed the money, basically. And the people of Chicago are literally just waiting for a re-election to happen so they can pack this man up, guys.
to the heart of their problems.
And Gavin
They're
Newsom.
losing votes, they're losing electoral power, and they're losing their credibility. Doing pro-growth policy doesn't always lead to more popularity or political power. But at this moment, for Democrats, the two are completely intertwined. Without more space for more people in the places that they control, their party will keep losing ground. And if they want to win again, they better start figuring it out. Quick.
Yeah, guys, here's the thing. The Democrat Party has lost a lot of people, and a lot of it could absolutely be things that are actually tangible. I think we all like online like to sit down and basically speak and have conversations about how their ideologies are in fact the reason why people are running. That could be one specific thing, but I do think at the end of the day, as he said here, people are voting with their feet. People ask me all the time, why didn't you like Kamala Harris? Bro, I care about things that affect my household. All right. If I already feel I already pay too much in taxes, why would I want to pay more in taxes? Right. Because I know specifically that I fall into the category of who she's looking to tax more. I run a corporation with ownership in multiple LLCs. I know exactly I'm the person that I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay any more taxes than I'm paying. Okay, and it's already too excessive. All right. Don't get me wrong here. If I actually benefited in any meaningful manner from the taxes, other than the things that are just the obvious things, I mean, I think that's fair. I don't mind paying to help roads and the city kind of move forward like that. But when it comes down to things that do not really benefit my family, I do not share my vote, bro. I don't. My vote is my vote. Your vote is your vote. Like, if you think differently than me, I love that for you. I want you to vote for your specific interest. Don't allow people to basically sway your mind. I want you to be exactly who you are, regardless of whatever it is, guys. That is not me. I have all types of people in my life who have all types of political, views and ideologies and things like that. I have no problem with anyone. None. People have problems if you don't think like they do, but that's not me as a person. I want you to vote specifically at all times for things that have the ability to affect your family specifically. Taxes had the ability to affect mine, so I'm not going to sit here and back someone that's going to raise my taxes higher than they already are, guys. Period. I can't do it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And then all the other things, like my wife has no interest in the ending of babies' lives and things like that. That's not something that we do in the household. So again, it's not something that I'm going to sit here and vote to promote. I think if it comes down to like losing the life, let's say, of the person carrying, obviously for medical issues like that, that's not the same case. I'm referring to the people who utilize that specific service as basic birth control. Oopsie, those people. Nah, right? And that's the thing that I'm trying to say here. Things that do not have the ability to affect my household, I'm not going to vote for because it doesn't affect my household. All right? And specifically not in the best interest of my household, at least. But either way, the way he put it, though, it was very intelligent. I like this. Right? Send me more of his videos. I think he's good, guys. There's probably a team behind him because it looks to be very well put together. I don't think that this is just this person Right, it's probably like an organization or something, but the overall vibe of it was great. And then bringing it back to the things that actually matter in people's households, like the price of the house that they're in. Oh yeah, that could be it. Right now let's just bypass the the funny stuff, right? And let's actually be 100% serious. Yeah, that's why they left. That and probably taxes, right? Yeah, the price, the cost of living and taxes. What is required to live in some of these places, people don't make in 2 years. Okay, the average person doesn't make in like 2 years. So of course they're leaving. Why would they stay there? It's not to the benefit of their family. If they stay here any longer, they're going to deplete their savings, and what happens? They have nothing for retirement. Would they work till they're 90? Guys, it's better. This is a better thing for them. So, and they just so happen to move out of this blue stronghold, which so happens to be an echo chamber. Everywhere you go, you know that you're going to encounter someone who thinks and feels the same way about insert group. So that's going to be beneficial to keeping the echo chamber alive and fed, type of thing. Then you move, you go somewhere else, and the whole ideology is different. The vibe is different. And then what happens immediately? You turn into a conservative. That's what happens. I'm guessing that's the pathway here, guys. Right? It's a pipeline, let's say, and they're definitely losing people due to it. I definitely would say that a good bit of it is also how they speak about men, which seems to be the overall trend. And I just can't imagine why men would want to even partake in a system that basically hates you to your, like, listen to them speak, bro. Listen to them speak. Listen to them speak. They don't like your existence. They just need you to vote for them. But either way, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly.